Just to recap on some considerations when creating your terrain. First off, creating terrain takes time. As you see, you can quickly throw together something in a few minutes, but is it quality? Okay, this comes over time and persistence and really getting into your terrain and working on little sections at a time. Okay, now looking at the grass here, this is something else I want to bring up. Now this grass is just crazy. There's just too much grass. Now if anyone saw me build this terrain, they would have seen me look at it from a far off view, select my grass and select the paintbrush, and then I just started dabbing all over the place. Now if we go in and play test that, you'll see that the grass is just over the top. Okay, there's too much grass. Look, we can't even see the ground texture underneath that grass. Okay, so again, making terrain takes time, especially with the grass and your additional details. What you really should do is have different layouts for different parts of your product, of your project. What are you building at the time? Now, if we went to the start and saw I had all these different layouts. Now let's see what I've got. A scene edit layout. Here we go. This is something I should have been working in when doing the terrain. I've given myself more screen real estate. I can zoom in closer and just get a little bit more detail when I'm working with my terrain. So change your layouts, unlike I did. Okay, you set up all these different layouts so you can get the most out of building your projects. I've got one here, tear off. Everything can even be disassociated. Lost the terrain. So again, modify your workspace. Use it to your advantage. Try and make the most out of this, especially when you're doing things like grass on terrain, where you have to pretty much zoom into every tree. Make sure you get some grass in around the footings of all the trees. Okay, you're working on detail, so it does take time. Again, with the consideration of the grass. And trying to paint all my grass from so far away. If I zoom in, there's just grass places where it should not be. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. I'm starting to get some detail now. And look, this is supposed to be a cliff. Right? Can't even tell. Look, I can barely see the cliff texture for all that grass in there. Okay? So that's final on that point. You've got to pay your attention to detail when you're creating your terrains. Actually, while we're working on grass, let's just zoom in again. This is something I'll cover more in quality settings and things like that. Look at our grass. Because it's so dominant, it colours the terrain for itself. But we can see it's not really that natural. But like this funny green going to a orange and yellow kind of tip on the grass. So we can modify that grass. Let's go in our grass. Go to edit. You see we've got a couple of sliders here for our colours. What happens if we play around with these for a little bit? See that happening in real time? I'm starting to add tint to all that grass. Come in here and tweak your values around a little bit. Until you start to get the colouring of your grass more fitting in with surroundings. And again, really can't see that happening when there is just so much grass without any other contrast to compare it to. And that looks a little bit more natural. So we've got some weeds in there, they're alright colour. Actually, while we're on the grass, let's just try and change the size of it a little bit. Let's give it some contrast to even the other ones. There we go, so we have a width. Our little grass clusters. Modifiers. Let's bring in that height too, so There we go. See, we're starting to customize our graphs. Okay, so even just changing the size there, I've brought some of that out of there. Now again, while you're looking at your scene and checking things, you'll see there's really not a lot of definition in this texture, so I've spread out the tiling of that texture too much. Let's go to our textures. Let's just see what I've set everything at. Probably 30. Just put everything down to 20. You see that got manipulated there. I don't think this is a texture yet. Yeah, we'll just drop everything down to 20. There we go. See that starting to pull that in. If we go back to the default 15, okay, it's looking far less pixelated there, isn't it? So it really is a matter of taste, a matter of aesthetics. Muck around with these things until you get them just right. There we go. We're obviously on a blend because we were modifying that over two textures, that area. But as I quickly look around, I can see, yep, okay. This is right close here, but it's looking a bit better. We look off to the mountains. Can't see any obvious tiling there. It's starting to look like a good resolution for that texture. Okay, so that's just a couple of considerations on the textures and especially the graphs. Okay, back to the trees. And again, all looking part of the aesthetic. Now, that is a fantastic little tree that we created. Added a collider to. It doesn't really fit into our scene, so let's replace that. I'm going to make another tree first of all. Let's go to a new scene. Not sure of changes I've made, so I will hit save. Let's see what else we've got that would fit into this type of scenario. That's a bit much of a winter woodland tree. There we go, that's one with a little less detail. Bring that into our scene. We'll check on that and we can see, yes, this is another situation where we don't have a collider attached to the game object. Component, physics, capture collider, and the same as before, using the sizing values of the capture collider. We'll modify that collider until it decently encapsulates that tree. Okay, so there's just a quick recap on adding a collider to a tree. So now we've made a tree, we want to make it into a prefab where we can use over and over again. So we'll add that to our trees with colliders. Back to our other scene. Don't have to save that. Let's see if we can quickly swap that tree out for something a little bit more suitable. Edit the tree. And we'll bring in Scott's Pine, which is great. Scott's Pine, that's changed there. We'll hit apply. Let's find our terrain. See if that's taking effect. There we go. We've lost a lot of contrast from the colour, unfortunately, but I think those trees are more suited to the terrain I seem to be creating. Now, of course, I've already said enough about the grass and that, but next time you see my particular landscape, it won't be absolutely covered in grass like this, all the way up the sides of cliff hills and things like that. So I'm going to be deleting all my grass and reapplying that slowly while zooming in until I get the grass exactly how I want it. And not just this massive big blanket of grass everywhere. Okay, that's enough about the grass, but honestly, really, less is more. It's one of those situations where that saying doesn't make sense, but makes sense. Okay, just a few final follow-ups on trees. Let's go to documentation, back to the user manual, and we're looking at the terrain. So as I said, we can expand on each one of these topics discussed here. We can expand on the height, goes through the tools and how to use them, and more on the textures, which will probably show you more about blending and things. Okay, but I wanted to draw your attention to the last couple of sections. Trees, where it covers a lot of the things that I've been discussing, but most importantly, if you get all the way to the bottom of this page, here comes the tree collider considerations. Add a capsule collider and tweak it and make it the game object into a new prefab. So pretty much exactly what I was demonstrating and just did in that final example. If you have a tree and you can see it doesn't have a collider, drag it into an empty scene. Add a capsule collider, resize that to suit the tree, and then make that tree its own new prefab. Then when you add trees to your terrain, use your prefab with the collider you've created. Now finally, it does have here in bold type capsule. Okay. Now I haven't done much experimenting, but I'm just going to go with what I'm told here. If you have to use a capsule collider on a tree. And again, something that I personally want to experiment after doing the last videos. When I had a look at this, let's save scene. When I grabbed the bamboo plant, notice there were several. Now one collider is not going to work there. So as an experiment yourself, and I'll be doing this after the videos tonight, I'll be trying to add some multiple colliders. I'll create some empty game objects with colliders as a child of this object. And I'll see if you can add multiple colliders to one tree, and I'll report back on that. There's something you can test for yourself. No harm done. Okay, so that's nearly all about trees and terrain. So we have the Unity user manual with some information about the trees and the grass, the tinting, the painting, the scaling. Okay, and then finally, if you want to get onto making your own trees, of course with all terrain there is a ton of information out there, plenty of tutorials and other resource information. But again, if we go to the Unify Community Wiki, hit the tutorials, and then in the tutorial list you will see the Tree Creator tutorial. Okay. Now when I'm going to make my first tree finally, this is definitely where I'm going to start off and have a look. You see it seems to cover everything from the basic steps. Okay, materials, creating your branches, adding some leaves. So plenty there to get you going with making your own trees even.